A major part of this course is the understanding of economic models, hopefully in a pictorial or graphical sense, or we might say a major part of real-world analytics is economic models. So Google defines the economic model as a simplified, a simplified description of reality designed to yield hypotheses about economic behavior that can be tested. So we can give more than one description of the economic model. Uh, Personally, I understand a lot better by example, so we can replay that. So that is actually a very good definition of the economic model. There are more, much more technical, a lot of different ways to say it, technically proficient, but basically you have a model, you make predictions from the model, some way to test it. But I think that's a pretty good description. So one of the most fundamental economic models is the basic supply and demand graph, uh, kind of the supply and demand model. So we have that right here. Yeah, it just looks like an X, the supply and demand, but it is the first quadrant of the XY axes there. Horizontal is quantity, vertical is price, and we have two straight lines, the demand curve or the demand line and the supply line. So the vertical, yeah, if we scribble, we can erase. The vertical is going to be price P, and the horizontal, of course, is going to be a quantity Q, is typically what we call those. Yeah. So both the demand function and supply function are illustrated as price as a function of quantity. So one little kind of characteristic that people might find confusing, what I'm kind of talking about is supply and demand on the same graph. Very simple, but people might find it a little bit confusing, but it's just that. It's uh, two lines on the same graph. But what I'm specifically talking about is the quantity there. So if we kind of zoom in a little bit here, as we know, like quantity of what, the horizontal is going to be quantity there. Yeah. But demand is, of course, the quantity that the customer is actually buying. So for the demand curve, I like to highlight it that way I can erase it really easily. For the demand curve, we're literally talking about that this is the quantity that customers are buying. Yes. Okay, so for the supply curve, yeah, it doesn't matter if a company is literally producing this. We don't talk about retail, wholesale. That's some stuff that we talk about later, but it doesn't matter if a company produces a product or if they just hold it, like Walmart. We sell this, we're holding this product, but the supply is obviously the quantity that a company will hold. So we have quantity, but for demand, it's literally how many we buy. And for supply, it's the quantity supplied. But for both of them, it's a quantity. So that's why we have that right there. Getting a little bit messy there. Let's see if we can erase all that in there. So I just want to give a pretty brief description of everything here. That's the supply and demand curve. And I took a few notes over here. Yeah. So demand refers to the quantity purchased by a consumer. Supply refers to the quantity produced by a producer, or at least a quantity held by a seller, store, or company, etc., just like we had said. Yeah. So if we kind of go down the line here, I just kind of end up, it's redundant. I end up repeating myself there. But y-axis price, and price is, it's always f of x. Y is a function of x. The price is a function of quantity. Vertical is a function of horizontal. So price is a function of quantity. Quantity is the horizontal axis. The demand refers to the quantity purchased. Supply refers to the quantity held. So we said all that. This is kind of the other characteristic that we want to know. What are that just is stating what does the lines mean. So we're literally saying that as the demand, Let's see if we can get that there. Yeah. So as the quantity increases, we're literally saying that the number purchased decreases. Yes. So yeah, we do it where we accidentally erase that right there. Yeah. Okay. So as the quantity increases, yeah, we're literally saying that the supply held. Yeah, I'm sorry. So I made a mistake there. As the quantity increases, uh, I think I made a mistake with both. So I do apologize for that. Just takes up a little bit of time. I said it wrong there with supply and demand because the supply and the demand, those are the graphs. What we're saying is that as the demand increases, the price, yeah, the price decreases. That's what demand is saying. And of course, as the quantity increases, the price for supply, yeah, increases. So that's obviously what those mean. And that's going to be the equilibrium point, which of course we say in a minute. So we wrote that here. It took a while to say that. But demand, as the quantity increases, yeah, the price decreases, and supply, as the quantity increases, the price increases. And of course, in real life, they're not straight lines, they're very gentle curves, but depending on the industry, they could be fairly complicated graphs. We don't talk about that here. This is just basically the introduction. Supply and demand curve is what that is. Yeah. So then, of course, we have the equilibrium point. Yeah, the most obvious important outcome of this is that equilibrium point where the two graphs meet. But this quantity right here, which yields this price, this is basically what we want. That's where the supply and demand curve meet there. So equilibrium in a market is very obviously the point of intersection of the two graphs. So at a given price, the quantity which demanders are willing and able to purchase is equal to the quantity of the product which suppliers are willing to supply. So, we kind of have a simple way of stating the equilibrium point. Let's kind of zoom in over here. So, of course, any empirical evidence or numerical, experimental, basically anything that we do in the real world, an experiment or some sort of data collection is much more difficult to understand than our graph. We need to be able to make accurate predictions from our model, or the model simply isn't of any use. So once a model is constructed, the economic analyst then pose questions that are of interest. So we're kind of considering the supply and demand that we just discussed. Yeah. Uh, it's rather complicated to understand these things. We do get back into this, but we just kind of make a basic statement. It's hard to say it watered down. But in the supply demand example, one might be interested in predicting the future price of a commodity given current changes in a particular market. If, for example, we expect to see a restriction in supply, a downward shift uh, in the supply schedule, and an increase in demand, an upward shift in the demand schedule, then we would use our model to predict a higher market clearing price in the future. It's very, very hard to make that clear, but what I've tried to do is kind of illustrate it in this one drawing right here. Okay, so as previously stated, the economic model is better described by examples. Philosophically speaking, the economic model, kind of the process, as we're illustrating here, is very similar to the scientific method. So, we don't want to kind of go too far outside the subject. But with the economic model, it is just as there are many, many things. that stem off the scientific method. The economic model is just the economist's way of stating the scientific method. So I've kind of illustrated this here. It's just another kind of way to diagram the economic model. So we describe this as step one, we observe some aspect of the universe. Yes. So observe some aspect of the universe. Yeah, they say it, that we always say it kind of philosophically or very generally across all fields of study. Okay, so step two, we create a model of what we have observed. So we create a model. Okay, so we've made some sort of very thorough observations and we've created a model. Yeah. So from observation to model, there's supposed to be some sort of course, theoretical abstraction. Very unclear. This generalizes across anything, the philosophical way of saying it, but we've made some observations. There has been some sort of a theoretical abstraction that turns those observations into some sort of a model. Yeah. So just trying to share my understanding of this here. Okay, so step three, ask relevant questions and deduce answers using your model. Predictions is what I just said, all fancy. Yeah. So we make predictions using our model. Now we're just talking about the basic ideas. So if we're making predictions from our model, there's supposed to be some sort of logical deduction from our model that allows us to make those predictions, yes? So step four, test the model's predictions using real world data. Yeah. So, then we test, and it is true that the thing, we might refine this thing or the thing, we just kind of start over there after we run our tests. The result of some tests could also be considered observations or results. And then the entire thing could just start over. We just refine the entire thing. But obviously, we run tests from our model, and we have to be able to make predictions about whatever we're studying from our model for it to be of use here. Yeah. But all of that basically concludes our introduction of economic models. So next video, we're going to introduce the market system.